guys, what's up? This is Chinmay, and I was just debating whether I should wear my glasses or not for this, and I have just decided that I won't. This video is just a way for me to document my life before I become famous, and it's archival for me to remember where I was today, which is what I don't even remember. It's 28th of July 2026. And I'm just going to yap to the camera because I want to start yapping to the camera. And I realize that you can just do that. So I hope this doesn't come off as one of those videos of hot girl shitting out 20 things I learned before I was 20. So, yeah, what I want to talk about today is the last phase of my life, which was the past 3 months, starting from somewhere around May 20th. Um, I called this phase corporate jihad because it was the first time I was experiencing what corporate feels like, and jihad because it's a holy war, I guess. And yeah, I just like being over to the top and dramatic with how I embellish the details of my own life. So, what was this supposed to be? Um, I was supposed to learn how to get corporate. Um, that means I learn how to talk better, I learn how to be more visible with my work instead of just grinding. I learned to maintain connections in a more corporate way. I learned how to take care of myself in a more corporate way, and that may or may not involve getting sloshed on the weekends or doing a bunch of mini triathlons, which is what I actually ended up doing. And yeah, I was coming into it from a slightly rough time, or rather a chill time, because the previous phase was called Letting Life Come to Me Part 2, where I just learned to be chill. I learned to chill the fuck out. I was supposed to learn how to breathe a lot deeper every day, how to just take some time and chill out. It's not that deep, and feel way more safer with how I was going through life. And yeah, coming off of that, this was supposed to be where I learned activity, which is not being chill, being active, making those goals for yourself and hitting them, learning how corporate works, how companies work. And I got a bunch of insights about companies from working within a company, of course. So I was working as a quant developer at a company, um, and this was in Gurgaon, which is in Delhi, which has extremely shit AQI. So I was constantly kind of sick. I couldn't breathe as good as I was breathing before this. But part of corporate for me, and what I understood from the experience of all these people I used to see in lifts and in their sutta breaks, is I realized a lot of corporate, unfortunately, is about pushing through this stress, even if it's almost voluntarily being unaware of your own body, because you don't really want to understand what the cost of your inactivity is. yeah, I realized that at least for the duration of this phase of my life, I prioritized learning action more than necessarily being too worried about every single aspect of how I could be living my life the best. And I think that is part of it as well. Part of being a professional is just showing up. And I think professionality is pretty underrated. Um, it's a very valuable skill to learn. And of course, you won't always optimize for um, getting the most out of yourself. Sometimes the way to optimize getting the most out of yourself is to care for yourself. But in other times, it's not. Other times, you just need to push through. And that is what I did do for some of this. The other times I genuinely enjoyed what I was doing. I was working on a predictive modeling pipeline and execution pipeline for the stock market. Yeah, and it was really fun to do that. I learned so much about how the market flows. I learned about volatility surfaces. I learned about order flow imbalances. I learned about the market microstructure. And I learned what it's like to be a good dev, which is, of course, changing really fast now with all of the agentic harnesses and optimized workflows, loop engineering, graph engineering. I think it's fundamentally changing what it means to be a dev. But philosophically, I think something very fundamental to being a dev is expecting things to not work and making them work instead of being entitled about it. Even if it's a small thing where you just need to look up an API reference, that is also a pretty cool thing, honestly, because large scale business systems are designed for entropy reduction, and you're somehow able to actually do that, which is kind of cool, honestly. Another thing I wanted to do, which I am doing right now, is I'm yapping and want to try to structure my thoughts more. Part of that comes from speaking slower, part of that comes from trying to think through what I'm speaking before I'm speaking. But if I'm continuously trying to think through what I'm speaking before I speak it, that kind of takes some spontaneity out of it. I worked a bunch of 12, 11, 13 hour days. I think on average I would have worked around 10 and a half to 11 hours a day, which to some people might sound like a lot, but honestly it was not that difficult. And I think it is standard, as bad as it sounds, to you sometimes just need to work to get things done, and I don't really have any regrets about that. I think the satisfaction that I got from delivering, or rather finishing up what my project was supposed to do, is more valuable to me than perhaps what I could have done with that. It's what I feel like at this point, but it seems slightly bullshit now that I say it. Uh, yeah, there is a Marxist critique of that forming inside my head, but I think it was a pretty good idea to actually push through. It's it's a way of learning through real feedback of what those long hours do to your body, and understanding that instead of just theorizing about it and never actually going out into the world. I also maintained a pretty strict workout regimen. Or rather, I just told myself I'd be doing 100 push ups every day. and 100 jump squats, which is really not much, but it was more of a discipline thing. I got a pull up bar near the accommodations that I had been given, and I fucked around with that a bit. I think it was a great financial investment to get that. And in general, I really liked how I structured my fitness during this. I listened to a bunch of hip hop. I used to dance around a bit, and I think I realized how great it is to move your body to get rid of stress. And it's like how Ido Portal says, and every animal in the animal kingdom has shaking as a natural stress response, but our movements have been colonized in a way that we don't really do that much. And I think a lot of self destructive habits would be gone if we could take away the shame from shaking. Other things I learned from this internship were I really respected my mentor, and I think I realized what it means to be an uncomfortable boss, which means that you are always someone who is technically respectable, of course. You are always approachable for any problems, but at the same time, you're not a pushover. And it like it's clear whose ideas are eventually going to be implemented. And what that means is that if someone under you wants to do something really ambitious, then they need to go ahead and take ownership. And instead of just pitching ideas, you just get it done and then show them results. And at that point, they can, of course, agree with it. But if there is just a vague ideation, then you would be better off following what someone who's more experienced is saying. And I think it's a good way to lead. I learned a lot about trading. I learned how to evaluate decisions in terms of P&L. It's a much more blunt and barren way of looking at decisions when you just look at them for the P&L they cause you, which is sure, of course, it's a pretty interesting reduction of multivariate utility function. In general, I was always convinced that the utility function for anyone is very high dimensional, and that is not really an invite for you to never reduce it to clear decision outcomes. If you reduce it to, a lot of people reduce it to money, power, fame, and that is honestly sometimes a better um, guide for decision making than trying to make something of an extremely high dimensional thing, which is just spec. It's something that you can't really use for anything. Um, though I still do agree that ethics is some sort of an optimization problem in an extremely high dimensional space, and maybe giving up and surrendering to understanding yourself is part of that, where you become the dimension itself in a delusive way. Uh, that is again too abstract for anyone to take insight from without me explaining every part of it, which I don't really think this video is for. Which is another thing that I learned from the internship, which is to temper your impatience or work with it depending on what the situation demands. Sometimes you just need to focus on what will make you money in quant, or in life you just need to focus on what a specific decision is supposed to optimize, and let your brain act through you instead of trying to hedge the decisions or move them a certain way because you have some other motivations which you don't really want to accept yourself.